I mean, there's a huge issue, and again, it's so multifaceted, right? We talk about brainwashing and stuff, right? Well, and there's listen, I'm a guy and you're a guy. We're immersed in this world. So when new things come out, we're reading it and we are in it. Most people aren't. And if they're not interested in it, they have other hobbies. They want to do other things that I'm not interested in. Like, for example, in the United States right now, football, like there's local teams that I know that are going to the Super Bowl, and I could care less. I have no idea that it's happening. I have people texting me, telling me, and I'm like, that's amazing. Part of me thinks maybe I should be paying attention to football, but I could care less, right? Like, I'm reading like research on a new health paper that just came out, and that's what interests me. But, here's the deal. You're absolutely right. And there's so much. I mean, I'm just thinking there's so much that we don't know, right? And here's just a perfect example, right? Glyphosate, Roundup, the weed killer that most of us know. We were told by the authorities, by the FDA or all these governing bodies that this is safe, this is effective. Trust us, guys. And if they put that seal of approval, FDA approval, hey, as a consumer, I'm assuming all right, that's a high authority that I'm assuming, I don't know, but I'm assuming they have these rigorous tests that they're doing and they're looking at it in my best interest. Well, they told us repeatedly for the last 10 years, Roundup, glyphosate is okay. It's safe and effective to spray on crops. It doesn't do anything to humans. Well, guess what? We know that not to be true. Dr. Stephanie Seneff wrote an amazing book called the Toxicity. I have it over here on my shelf somewhere. I can't find it, but read that book. I mean, she is an MIT senior researcher. So don't tell me like she doesn't know how to extrapolate or understand data. She has some very good charts showing the introduction of glyphosate and all of a sudden the escalation of autism. Now there's multiple reasons for autism, but what we do know about glyphosate is what it does is it disrupts the gut microbiome. Okay. You can look at Dr. Zach Bush. He talks all about this, and he has a company actually dedicated to restoring your gut microbiome because of the glyphosate. Glyphosate, I didn't, as a consumer, I thought, big deal. Organic, not organic. Even as someone going into the store, I think I'm just paying more for a label, and partially that's true. And I didn't give it that much credence. I'm like, what's the big deal? GMO, non-GMO? I just want to eat some food. As long as I'm cooking healthy, I'm fine. And I've completely gone back on that decision because what I've learned about glyphosate and that weed, that Roundup, that chemical is so destructive. It actually binds to the glycine molecule. Okay. Why is glycine important? Glycine makes up collagen. It makes up the matrix of your bones, and they will not form a solid collagen matrix without glycine, which we're now seeing more and more, and her predictions, Dr. Stephanie Seneff, is that more and more athletes, we're going to see more and more injuries and tears because you're getting this accumulation. And again, going back to the whole gut, we know there's the gut-brain axis. So the gut and the brain are communicating with each other. If you have an unhealthy or leaky gut, you're going to have things like brain fog. You might have things like autism. You might have things like an ADHD kid, right? I mean, all of these things might be possible because the gut is not healthy. And that is a huge disruptor. It disrupts selenium. So now you're talking thyroid issues. What glyphosate, what it does is absolutely terrible. And they recently just went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said to our Environmental Protection Agency, our governing body, said, you better go back and change your guidelines. They slapped them in court. They said, this is unacceptable. They said, you better go back and actually change the guidelines of what you originally told us because this is not adding up. And so that's just a perfect example. Another thing that I've noticed over the years and come to learn too is that, speaking of the EPA, we are told a lot of times these companies will do it right in your face, and you just read it, but it seems so innocuous. And I'm going to give you an example. If you go to the Environmental Protection Agency website right now, again, another governing body looking out for us, telling us, hey, don't worry, as long as it's under this parts per million, you're safe and we're okay. Well, they tell you on their website that you've been bombarded by 86,000 man-made chemicals every year. And they just say it in like this, such like a nice way that you don't even notice, like, wait a second, I'm being bombarded by how many chemicals? And so that brings up this idea is if I'm being assaulted on a yearly basis by 86,000 man-made chemicals, and by the way, that number's increased because a couple of years ago it was 77,000. if I'm being bombarded by these chemicals, who's removing these from my body? Right? Which is why, and I know I'm sure you're going to ask me later, is why I'm such a big fan of liver detox, because your liver has to process all this. And the last thing I want to say, Lay, and then we can move on, or you're happy to ask me more, but there is a great book, and I got to interview this guy, Mark Schatzker, and he wrote the book, The End of Craving. It's an amazing book, and it outlines really what you're talking about. And what I love is he gives this parallel between Italians and Southerners in the United States. And he says, why is it in Italy they have like a 6.4% obesity numbers for their population, but in the Southern United States, it's like 40%. And yet they, on a macro level, like macros for what they're eating in their food, it's exactly the same. Italians in Northern Italy, they love fat, they love lard, they love cheese, they love pasta. Well, guess what? Southerners in the United States, they love lard, they love sweet teas, they love their pork, and they love their mac and grits. And so we're seeing the same kind of macro profile, but yet Italians aren't fat. And so the argument would be, well, yeah, but Italians move more, and that's part of it. Yeah, they have a better movement practice, I would say, than the Southerners in the United States. But what it really comes down to is the processed foods. And that's what it drums down to. And so these processed foods are creating these what they call nutritive mismatches in our brain. And so our brain is getting signals that, for example, these fake sugars and these things like this, it's telling the brain, okay, I just got something sweet, but there's no calories because I'm eating, like, I don't know, let's say a Diet Coke. So you're having this Diet Coke and you're thinking, oh, I'm healthy because I'm not having any calories. Well, the brain is not an idiot, guys. And the brain is saying, okay, I just had something sweet. And yet that means I should be getting a certain amount of calories based on the sweetness. And I'm not. And I'm pissed off, and I want those calories. Yeah. And so the brain is going to figure out a way, like, you better give me those calories. And so think about how that affects cravings and binge eating, and how all these people I'm drinking Diet Coke, but yet you're still hungry and you're still overeating. Well, this is all caused by these nutritive mismatches. And it's really fascinating when you get into some of the neuroscience and what's going on. And when they look at MRIs on people's brains, and they see what's happening and what they're being lit up by certain food, it's the same thing. So yes, there's a huge problem, and unless you're reading books like some of the books that we're reading and the people that we're interviewing, you may not be aware of that, and you might blame yourself. So I do have a lot of empathy for folks out there, because I know it's difficult if you're not in this world, and that's why there's people like you and I, hopefully, to break through that noise and help these people.
If you enjoyed this clip, press here for the full episode, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.